A long time ago, in a place very far away, up a very, very tall mountain, there lived two towns full of people who lived on opposite sides of the mountain. Now, long before that, long ago, the people all lived together on the top of the mountain, but they weren't really nice to each other. There was jealousy, so much so that the villagers would spread cruel and hurtful rumors about each other. There was apathy. Nobody was willing to lend a helping hand or support their neighbors when they were in need. There was so much distrust, so much stress that the people started to believe that they would be better off on their own. Now, one day there was a huge argument, the argument of all arguments that involved all of the people. It was so dramatic, so painful, that in the heat of the moment, they decided to build a very high wall at the top of that very tall mountain. And with every single stone they laid, they solidified those terrible feelings. And then they turned and walked away, and they never looked back. And so you'll journey with me now, far, far into the future. So much time had passed that the argument was long forgotten. In fact, it had been so long that the people had lost their memory of anyone else living on the other side at all. Now, the left side of the mountain was beautiful. There were flowers growing in the cracks in the rocks. There were streams flowing with the little fish that would nibble your toes when you waded across. And the people who lived there were generally wonderful. They were kind and gentle. They took care of each other when things got tough. They were honest and fair, and they always kept each other laughing. And of course, sometimes they forgot, and they'd find themselves slipping into not so wonderful behavior. But luckily, at the beginning of every year on a special date calculated by the waxing and the waning of the moon, the whole village would gather together in the late afternoon in the center of town as the cool breeze arrived and the sun began to sink in the sky, and they would remember how important it was to be good to each other, how much they needed each other and loved each other, and how much better it felt when they were gracious. And keeping this reminder in mind, they would begin to hum. And as the sun dipped lower and lower toward the horizon, the people would walk up to the very, very top of the mountain, and they would sing, their clear voices ringing out in the crisp mountain air. And then they would return home. They would light their candles and bless their wine and share a festive and delicious meal. They would snuggle their children and thank God for their good and special lives as they marked this sacred day. Now, the right side of the mountain flourished too. There were fruit trees that bore all kinds of delicious things to eat and the most brightly colored birds you'd ever seen. The people that lived there were fantastic. They were funny and happy and charming and welcoming. They loved each other hard, and they never passed up an opportunity to celebrate. But, sometimes they forgot how charming and funny their neighbors were, and so they focused instead on how they never took their trash cans in on time. And they'd become easily annoyed and careless and slow to forgive small indiscretions. But thankfully, every year, on one special date at the start of the new year that everybody so looked forward to, as the seasons turned, the whole town put on their most beautiful clothes, and they gathered together in the center of town, and they would offer their blessings and talk about the past year, holding hands. And as the sun began to set, they would walk up to the tippy top of that very high mountain in the dark, singing with their hearts wide open. People on that second side of the mountain sang their song in the calm of the dark, and then, radiating peace and comfort, they'd return home to rest and look forward to the future with joy. Now, in case you forgot, at the top of this very, very high mountain, there was a very, very high wall. And neither side really bothered to ask why. It had always been there forever, it seemed, and they didn't know where it came from. And since each side believed they were the only people for hundreds of miles, it didn't seem to matter much anyway. And so for generations, the two villages kept the tradition exactly as it was. They missed each other each year only by the time it took to walk up or down the mountain, never knowing the other existed. Now, one year, the first village was running late. The kids were taking forever to tie their shoes. The dog had to go out. The oven wouldn't light. They couldn't find their keys, all the usual stuff, but all at once. And they didn't begin their march until the sun had almost set. And the second village had a really tough year. It felt as if everything that could possibly have gone wrong did indeed go wrong, and they desperately needed that dose of joy and togetherness and calm and peace. And so, perhaps the first time in the village history, they headed up the mountain while the colors of the sunset still shone in the sky. And in this wild moment of coincidence, or maybe divine intervention, the people arrived at the very, very top of that very high mountain at the same time on either side of that very high wall. And when they began to sing, something extraordinary happened. People on either side were stunned just for a moment into complete silence. And in that instant, they understood there were people on the other side of the wall, but more than that, they were friends, family, their other half, their brothers, their sisters, their people with this same tradition, this same history, this same faith. And as they laid their hands on the wall on either side, they could feel the anger, the stubbornness, the selfishness radiating through the stones, and they realized why it had been built in the first place. And in that moment, they knew they could be better, and they would do their best to be better every single year. Singing and laughing, they tore down the wall from both sides. Each stone placed in rage was now removed with joy. And the people spent that evening celebrating side by side, overjoyed to find each other, to know that they were not alone. And they saw that despite their imposed separation, they shared the words they used to bless their wine. The recipes for their holiday meals, they somehow overlapped. And from that day on, every Rosh Hashanah, the people from both villages really looked forward to that joyful celebration at the top of that very high mountain. And more than that, they were so much happier to do it together. And they held on to that sense of gratitude for their bigger and better, louder and messier community, trying their best to be forgiving, opening their homes to each other, not sweating the small stuff or, even the big stuff quite as much. And so, my beloved friends, we've gathered here tonight, not at the top of a mountain, no, but somewhere equally as special, our sacred space, Temple Israel, surrounded by our friends and our families, some we know really well, and some we don't yet. All of us connected in this deep and powerful way, reflecting on the power of community, the power of this. And I don't have to tell you, this has been a tremendously difficult year, one during which, in our darkest moments, every single one of us built walls. And maybe we told ourselves that our walls were for self-protection or for safety or for peace, and that might be true, but they were often also walls of denial, of self-righteousness, of ignorance, all those things that separate us from one another. But the Jewish people is too small and too important for us to be divided, and we really, really need each other, now more than ever. And really, isn't that the point of Rosh Hashanah, to kick us into gear, to remind us that the melodies we sing and the blessings we recite as we wrap our arms around our children, the hopes we carry, the meals we share, they connect us across generations, teaching us year after year that no matter our distance, real, imagined, or even self-imposed, we are never alone. So today is the day. Today's the day we start tearing down our walls. We have 10 days to do it, when the gates are opened wide. And it takes all of us. We have to share that burden because there are too many stones to deal with all by ourselves. So whatever it is that's been weighing you down, that's been keeping you from being your best self and being there for others, it's time now to do that heavy lifting. And if we each work really hard, we do our own hard work, I am positive those walls will fall. May this new year be one of togetherness, be one of unity, and please God, be one of peace. We need each other. We need this magic, this people, this place which serves as a true cornerstone for our strong and beautiful and good and sometimes messy community. This is our precious village, and we don't even have to climb up a mountain to find it. So, let us sing. Let us sing to ring in 5785 with love and gratitude for each other and for this chance, this sacred chance to start again. Shana Tova Tigatevu. May the new year be a sweet year for all of us. You have to sing. Different sides of the mountain, get it?